Hello, everyone, and welcome to our panel. My name is Colleen Carroll, and I'm a content publishing coordinator at Nexus Marketing and your moderator for today's panel session. Our topic today is talking tech for associations, and I'm really looking forward to this conversation. But as usual, before I can introduce our panelists and we jump into this topic, I have a few quick logistics to cover. NX Unite is made in partnership with Nexus Marketing, and the NX Unite mission is to make introductions that lead to lasting relationships and serve as a hub for connection in the mission-driven sector. As you saw in our video, on NX Unite, you can find upcoming industry events, suggested influencers to follow, trusted solutions, cause-driven podcasts, and of course, panels with experts such as these lovely folks here with me today. Today's hour-long panel will include time both for questions curated by my team and questions from you all, our fantastic audience. We have a few questions that have come in with registration, but I'm going to give priority to our live audience members. So at any time during the panel, please feel free to submit questions either directly in the chat or in the questions tab, and we'll dedicate that kind of second half of the panel to your questions. So again, submit them at any time, and then we'll cover as many as we possibly can in that second half. If at any point you are having any technical difficulties, please let us know in the chat. My team member Malou is under the username Team NX Unite, and she will do her best to assist. So give a little holler in the chat and we'll figure out what's happening and try to get you back on and enjoying this session. I did also want to say that this panel session is being recorded. If when we get to the very end of the panel, the insight you heard was just so fantastic, you need to hear it a second time, that's fantastic. It'll automatically be in your email inbox at the end of the session. Give it 5 or 10 minutes after we finish up, and that recording should be there. It will also continue to be accessible on the NX Unite website in the on-demand panel section. So if you have any friends in the industry who you're like, can't believe they missed it, they needed to be there, that session was designed for them, please feel free to share that same registration page that you used to sign up, and they'll be able to access the recording. All right, finally, before I introduce today's panelists, I do want to give a big thank you to our audience, whether you are the ones joining us live or you're watching the recording tomorrow, a week from now, a month from now. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day. I hope you find this panel beneficial. And if you're joining us live, I hope you submit those questions so we can address the topics most relevant to you and your team. All right, to begin with the introductions, I'd first like to introduce Neeraj Garg, who is the Chief Operating Officer at Aplusify. For 20 years, he has worked alongside a multi-talented team to help associations and nonprofits drive digital transformation with their organization, enabling them to be more innovative, agile, and donor and member-centric. As Aplusify's COO, he leads an internal task force that shares lessons learned, best practices, and practical applications that specifically relate to associations and nonprofits. So glad you could join us, Neeraj.
Yeah. Hello, everyone.
Wonderful. Also joining us today is Melinda Starkweather, who is the founder of Starkweather Association Services. She has an extensive background in communications and information technology and has served on state and U.S. congressional campaigns. She developed Starkweather's Cirrus Change Readiness Toolset and Protocol. She focuses on creating organizations that thrive in change, and Melinda has been certified in change management since 2010 and coordinates the Change Management Initiative. Glad to have you, Melinda.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm looking forward to this.
And finally, today we have Thomas McClintock, who is the Senior Client Services Manager at Empowered Margins Incorporated. He uses his 30 years of MarTech communication and business development expertise to take digital marketing and automation to new heights. Tom founded and ran several firms, including 3 marketing agencies, a venture-backed content aggregator, and an international trading house. Tom knows how to use the right data to find the right audience at the right time. He particularly enjoys crafting targeted messages for fast growth tech companies like Empowered Margins because of their vision and ability to elevate and transform whole industries. Glad to have you, Thomas. Oh, you are muted, Thomas. Oh, you are still muted.
Okay, now you
can hear you now. Yep.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm excited for this.
Wonderful. We are going to jump in and get started. And Neeraj, I'm going to have you start us off with our very first question. How is the world of technology for associations different today than it was 5 years ago?
I think in the last 5 years, we have seen drastic changes, I think, all over the world. In the last couple of years with this pandemic, everything has gone remote. So we were talking about digital transformation, and I think that digital transformation has actually seen its full view in the pandemic because everyone was remote. There were like no physical events; they were all virtual events. So I think that digital disruption has happened in the last 5 years, and I think there has been a change in the customer behavior as well in the last 5 years because customers now don't want to just visit your website or maybe use your software. They actually want a connected journey. Okay. So when I say a connected journey, they want to understand and they want to know that we are being looked after by you. Your system knows us and we don't have to introduce ourselves to you. So I will take a simple example. Take an example of Mark, who is actually a loyal customer of your association. And now, since you have got your systems connected together and you are following Mark, you know that Mark is out of job and he's currently unemployed. So your renewal season starts and you start pushing mails to everyone to renew their membership. But since you have got that knowledge because of your connected systems that Mark is unemployed, you are being empathetic and you say that you provide a grace period of 3 months to Mark. And on top of that, since you know he's unemployed, you send him those blogs and posts or help him find a suitable employment. So Mark's find an employment, and then what happens is obviously he renews the membership with you, but he becomes a lifetime customer or a member with you. So what has happened is because you know your members so much that you have been able to engage with them, you have been able to be empathetic with them, and during these times have helped him, and he becomes a loyal customer for you. So that is what digital disruption does, right? It's more about like Amazon and Netflix. So whenever you do some kind of shopping with Amazon, right, it recommends you the next shopping that you have to do, okay, in the next email. Similarly with Netflix, if you watch a movie, it will recommend you next 10 movies to be watched based on what you have watched currently. So that is what customers want or your members want. They want themselves to be heard, they want themselves to be understood, and then they want themselves to be taken care of by you. So, and that can only happen if all of your technical systems within the organization are connected, because organization does not just use one system. So you will be using your association management system, then you will have your events app, you will have your learning management system, you will have your accounting system, and then other legacy systems. So unless these systems are connected together, the information will not flow in, and you will never get a 360-degree view of the customer like we did for Mark. Okay, so if these systems are not connected, then obviously you would have lost Mark because you would have sent him a renewal email and he would not have paid his dues and you would have just thrown him out of the system. So this is the magic that happens when your systems are connected. And I think this is what we call digital transformation, which has happened in the last 5 years, where customers are more important and they want a connected journey rather than just walking with you, right? So they want to be connected with you, they want to be heard. And I think that is what has changed in the last 5 years.
Definitely agree. Thank you so much, Neeraj. Melinda, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this as well. How is the world of technology for associations different today than it was 5 years ago?
I had the very similar thoughts to Neeraj. Remote, of course, everything had to go remote. And what I love about associations is they're so adaptable. And events that were in person, they determined very quickly that they could make an event of some sort be online, it could be hybrid. I think we've opened up the doors to doing a lot of things a lot of different ways. Instead of one massive event, figuring out how to do multiple smaller events. Online education, especially for continuing education credit, same thing. It's blown up. And I was just reading in the Association of ATD, Technology Development, that online education is here to stay and it's a force, along with micro-credentialing. So we've become very good at being agile and hybrid and remote in a way that people used to be a little concerned about, because we've always been a remote organization. And I love seeing the way people are just great at embracing that. As Neeraj also pointed out, the predictive analytics space has really blown up, and we see it in all kinds of different ways, but getting those analytics to understand what members might be at risk for maybe dropping off, or members, who might not be attending events, who are attending less and less. So that predictive analytics is huge. We use that with our change management as well. It's incredibly helpful to understand what behaviors will lead to certain outcomes or are likely to. I think we've also seen more teams working more dedicatedly with Slack, with these very highly organized Slack, Monday.com, Trello, things like that, where they're online planning and this asynchronous work, because we couldn't be in offices together. And now people have become very agile at using all this different technology. So we've got all these great tools that we're working with, and that can also be a distraction. So as much as we've adopted all these tools, we're also finding people are feeling more overwhelmed because there's so much in front of us all the time. We're reading a little bit less, we're scanning more, it's harder to get attention and focus. So there's a lot of good, but with that, some challenges and some opportunities to support.
Definitely. Thank you, Melinda. All right, Thomas, any additional thoughts from you on kind of how technology has changed today that in comparison to 5 years ago?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that these folks really hit the nail on the head. I guess I would just maybe summarize it into 4 trends. So data-driven decision making, we've already talked about that a little bit, but that is very important. If you don't know where your data is or who owns it, that's kind of the first thing to tackle. Sustainability has been important too. Associations are incorporating sustainable practices more and more into their operations and their events. Technology adoption is a big part of this. And then, remote work, which we've also touched on, that was accelerated by the pandemic. People are trying to figure out new and better ways to collaborate in any shape or form. And it's really changing the landscape quite a bit.
Definitely. Thank you, Thomas. Very quickly for our live audience, I wanted to let you know that a poll has gone live asking you how different is your association's tech stack today than it was 5 years ago. If you want to give us a little bit of insight in where you currently are at as well with this question. So far, 2 of you have answered and both of you say vastly different, which is really interesting and exciting. But would love to hear from a few more of you if you're interested in sharing. Melinda, I'm going to ask you our next question. What would you want an association professional to know who is ready to evaluate how their technology is currently serving their association and the gaps that could potentially be filled by technology?
I like that question a lot because we run into organizations that have been in this place. I think when you're looking at the gaps, what I really encourage people to look at is the core purpose. Like, what is your core purpose? Because I think sometimes organizations can erroneously identify gaps because they've seen a new technology that looks really great and they think, oh, we need to do that, or we need to do it this way. And that could be true. But I think you also have to look at that core promise that you've made to your members. Why are your members loyal to you? What do they need more of? What are they asking more of? Because that bright, shiny object syndrome can be a little dangerous. We think we need something we don't. That said, I think if you look at business process models, like what are your core processes that are serving members, that are bringing in your revenue, and go through a business process model exercise where you're looking at who does what, when, and how is it working, because those can be victims of strategic decay or technology decay. And so you need to see, is it still working the way we need it to? Is it solving our problems? If it isn't, then that's where maybe an integration will be a solution. I think sometimes what we've run into is organizations that have a gap, and it's not a technology gap, it's a training gap, it's an information gap. And so to spend that time making sure that your teams are well trained can save you from spending money that you really don't need to be spending. I guess those are probably my big observations.
Really helpful. Thank you, Melinda. Thomas, would love your thoughts on this as well. When people are ready to evaluate their technology and how it's currently serving their association, what do they need to be thinking about and what gaps should they be looking to fill?
Well, I would approach it that it's not your grandfather's cloud anymore. You all remember, it was a few years ago that everyone was saying, we're going to be moving to the cloud. Well, that wasn't actually a few years ago. That was more like a decade ago. And since then, it's evolved quite a bit. There are new APIs, better storage, better scripts and sequences, and basically ways to connect any database to any other database. And so if you think about your association in the context of what is the data that only you have, then you can figure out how to monetize that, whether there's a pandemic or not, whether you've got, lots of people signing up for the conference or you don't. You've got that data for your vertical that no one else has. And you can be creating non-dues revenue streams out of that. You can be hosting panel discussions on that. You can be getting on Zoom meetings about that. But it's understanding where the data is flowing. And so that breaks down into how are you collecting your data? How are you warehousing your data? How are you analyzing your data? And how are you visualizing your data? If you can look at data from the perspective of its velocity, its volume, and its variety, you can manage that probably more effectively than most associations have in the past. And you can tap into those revenue streams that I just talked about. So that's the framework in which I would recommend to evaluate your tech stack and the new system that you might want to get. There's a good chance that actually you don't need a new system. There's a good chance that what you've already got is going to work for you. But if you're not looking at it in that data management framework, the solution may be a little more elusive.
Wonderful. Thank you, Thomas. All right, Neeraj, anything you want to add to this conversation of evaluating and filling gaps with our technology?
Yeah, I think most of the points have been covered by Melinda and Thomas. Obviously, we need why we need a new system. And that question and that answer has to come from the business team, right? Because technology team cannot answer the question because it's the business who is actually driving things. So business should answer the question that they actually need a new system. Okay. And most of the times we have found out that the business team and the technology team are not in sync. Okay. So when they're not in sync, we actually implement a new system because, like Melinda said, a new technology has come. But since we don't know the objective of implementing that technology, the business is not on our side, and we just roll the product or the new system, and then we don't involve the business team in it. And when the new system rolls out, we have business users who are actually testing it, who actually don't know why the system has been implemented, right? Because they have not been asked before, or they have not been involved in testing of the new system. So it comes like a shock or maybe a surprise to them. And when the business users don't like the system or it comes as a surprise to them, they're not going to use it. And if you are not going to use the system and you don't have a user adoption within your organization, the whole point of implementing a new system has failed. You have invested thousands of dollars in implementing a new system for the business users who are not using it. So I think what we should take care of is we should involve both the business team and the technology team, and they should work collaboratively for the entire implementation of the new system. And we should identify champions from the business team, or we can call them mavericks, who are an expert and who can actually do the job of training the trainers, right? Because when the system goes live, it is the business users who are involved in the testing who are going to train the other users. The technical team, obviously, the technology team cannot train them. So we should keep these things in mind, and we should derive a business value for the proposition that we are investing. And once that happens and the business team and the technical team are in sync, obviously it will not come as a surprise to them, and it would be easy for them to adopt the system. And that is where the your return of investment will come from the entire system, because the users are using it. They are not. Otherwise, what will happen is they will continue using the old legacy systems, and the new system you have implemented is a third system that is there, and you will keep on integrating these two systems in the future, right? So you will have one more system added to the legacy system, right? What you should do is get rid of the legacy systems and impose the new systems on the users, and you cannot force them, right? It has to come naturally, otherwise they will not use it.
Great. Thank you so much, Neeraj. Thomas, I'm going to have you start us off with our next question. I think we all recognize that association professionals are busy. There's a lot happening, and sometimes it can be overwhelming to think about change. So do you have any advice for small changes that association professionals could impart now that could potentially have a really big impact on their association?
Yeah, I do. Colleen, two tips that I found have worked really well with our clients. One is stay in touch with your vendors. If you have your AMS, you've got ancillary systems that you're using, and it's very possible that you're not using 100% of those solutions. So a good way to save time and solve a problem is just pick up the phone, get in touch with the person that sold you that system, and find out if they can actually solve your problem. Because I think a lot of times we get sort of frustrated with how we've implemented the technology, and we get that confused with what the technology can actually do. And the result of that is we'll go on a big rabbit chase to try to find the perfect system, and not even realizing that what we've already got may in fact be able to help us more than it already is. So that's a quick way to leverage what you've already invested in. That's one tip. The second tip is I would, take a piece of paper and draw out a data diagram. Who owns the data that your organization needs? what, the membership department has certain data and the accounting department has certain data, and your members have their own benchmarking metrics for their data, and maybe there's some third-party sources that you could combine with that. Just write down the major sources of data that you need to work with, that you're basically repackaging for the benefit of your members, and map out who owns what, so that when you can see it all on paper in a holistic way, you might be able to say, you know what, if these people could communicate better with these people, then we would be able to provide more services to our members. So just a quick sketch, you can almost literally use the back of a napkin. It doesn't have to be anything fancy, but just writing that down and having a visual to help yourself understand who owns what data can be a big time saver.
Great. Thank you so much, Thomas. Neeraj, do you have any thoughts on small changes that could potentially have a big impact for our associations?
Yeah, I think one of the things that association professionals can do is when they are actually getting issues within their system, what happens is someone would say that we don't have the date of birth for these 10 members. So just go and upload those date of births, because the reports that we are pulling for our members, they're missing that data. So what the technology team does is it actually goes and finds the date of birth from maybe either the legacy system or from somewhere else, and they will just upload those 10 date of birth for those members. But what we don't realize as an association is that these are just 10 records out of maybe 100,000 records that you have within your system. And there might be more records that might be missing data or may have inconsistent data or incomplete data. So what, as an association member, we should ask the technology team to do is maybe do a kind of root cause analysis for what actually caused that data to be missing, right? So it may be that when you migrated from one system to another system, the source system must be missing that data, and that was not actually migrated to the targeted system. So instead of just correcting those 10 records, I think what we should do as a collaborative effort is find out more missing records, or maybe find out more records which have missing date of birth, find the root cause of it, fix it, and then upload it, right? So you may find that there are 1,500 records which are missing date of birth. So find those records first and then just update it. So what will happen is that you will save on the support time, because you are not going to raise another 20 tickets for the same issue. And this could only happen if the association professionals push the technology team, because technology team obviously does what the business says to them. Okay. So they have to be pushed, and we have to be smart as an association professional that we need to manage these things well. So if we are able to do that, and as Thomas said, right, if we are able to understand who owns which data, the things would be very easy, because any software that you use, right, it's just a collection of data which you are presenting, whether it's member data or their personal details, or whether even if you want to run analytics, it's all done on data. And if it is not organized, not consistent, not complete, all your member engagement reports or all your analytics that you are trying to predict, or trying to predict what your members want or don't want, I think that cannot be managed. So managing of data is something that we need to do as an association. And what we suggest our technology team and our association professionals is do a regular data audit, maybe every month or maybe every 3 months, just to ensure that data that is entering into the system is hygienic, right? And we are not creating data swamps out of it, right? Where data becomes unmanageable at a point of time, and then we don't know what to do with it. Then it will actually become a separate project to be done by a technology team. So data management is something that has to be done regularly, and it has to be driven by the associations, not the technology team.
Definitely. Thank you, Neeraj. Melinda, anything you want to add in terms of recommendations for small changes with big impact?
Sure. Yeah, it's so fun hearing Thomas and Neeraj because my brain went in another direction. But as soon as you brought up data hygiene, that definitely is something that we've run into when it becomes a naughty, big, expensive mess. Like Neeraj said, it's going to become some technology, much larger scale issue. And if you can just adaptively, look at what small problems are, address those in the moment. I think the other reason why that data hygiene is so important is when you look out internationally at GDPR and some of these privacy laws that are coming into place, we're going to need to really more deeply understand the data we have, who owns it, what we're asking from our members, because at some point in the future, we're going to need to really have that really clean and clear so that we can abide by those laws that are being passed. My original thought was really more thinking about training and upskilling your team and cross training. And cross training is the kind of thing that really can be done, with lunch and learns and quite easily. It doesn't have to be a really big project, but we have seen associations lose a couple subject matter experts or their event person or their continuing education person, and they're lost and they're in a really uncomfortable place. And if you can generalize more skills and have those skills documented, that documenting is a pretty small task. The cross upskilling is another thing that can be pretty easily scheduled into our days, yet the upshot is huge. I ran into a colleague at an event and he just was ashen, and I asked him what was going on, and he said that his chief of operations had a stroke and they were at an absolute loss. The office was in chaos, and they kind of knew what she did, but it wasn't super well documented, and so they weren't exactly sure who should take over what. And you run into these different stories where somebody leaves unexpectedly, or someone's on vacation at Burning Man and they absolutely can't be reached, and there's a problem that they didn't expect. So we've seen a lot of these different stories play out, and so simple things like training, upskilling, but also data hygiene, they can make a huge difference.
Great. Thank you so much, Melinda. I'm going to stick with you for this next question. For our associations that are ready to get particularly innovative and kind of think really big with their technology, what advice do you have? What do they need to hear?
I love this question because we run into so many groups like that. And what I really enjoy reminding people is technology is digital and it's super exciting. People are analog. And what that really means in a nutshell is there is a level of technology that's very predictable and people are highly unpredictable. And like Neeraj brought up, if you have people in the C-suite who have decided that we're going to be adopting some great new thing, but they haven't really proved the business case and they haven't properly prepared their team, there will be a lot of feelings, and those feelings and the different levels of logic that all the people bring to it can really upset your big technology goals. And an example is if you have a subject matter expert who's being replaced, they're going to have a lot of strong feelings about that. If you have people who are maybe being compensated because they're highly productive, productivity and adopting new systems work at cross purposes to each other until people are really appropriately trained. So I would say remember the people, remember to ready your team for the change. And there are a lot of different tools out there that allow you to do that. There's a phrase that I had run across that I really like, that technology is a great servant and it's a lousy boss. You want to make sure that the technology is serving you and you're not changing your processes or your promises to your members in order to fit into a technology that works a certain way. So I guess those are my main points.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Melinda. Neeraj, I'd love to hear from you on this as well. Any advice for our associations that are ready to think big with their technology?
I think most of the times associations run away from technology because they think it's a huge investment, and and I think their budgets are low sometimes, and they don't want to invest. But with new things coming like Salesforce Einstein, which is actually a base engine and is a part of Fontiva as well as Nimble AMS, plus other technologies as well. Uh, People don't realize that they get these things at a lower cost than what they imagine. So the technology cost has to be evaluated, and most of the times they don't seek help from other people or other technology companies on what would be the cost if they try to implement the technology. They perceive it as a huge cost, and then they drop that idea. And what happens then is, because if you're not running analytics for your members, you are not creating those kind of engagement dashboards, then you are not connecting with your member. And subsequently, technology is something that works in parallel with the business, because business has to technology just drives the business. It does not have any shape of its own. So if the business is not driving the technology and is not ready to invest, then obviously the growth of your association or your nonprofits, right, it's going to stop. So associations have to understand and devise ways in which they can implement these technologies within a certain budget. And if they're not able to, I think they should look for help outside and maybe ask vendors, get quotes from them, maybe sometimes deep dive themselves to understand, because there's a lot of stuff available now everywhere. You have comparison for various tools, like Melinda said, that whether do you need to integrate or do you need any kind of APIs that you require for your tools, or is your system at app itself that it can work? So these are the kind of questions they need to answer, and they have to be one step ahead of their vendors. So they need to drive things from the business side in terms of technology and invest in technology, because that is what is going to help their business grow.
Great. Thank you so much, Neeraj. All right, Thomas, anything you want to add in terms of suggestions for our associations looking to get really innovative with their technology?
Yeah, time and time again, we find that one of the biggest changes that an association can make is really embrace benchmarking. You know, Fred Burns said, tell them what only you do, and they will work only with you. And I love that little mantra, because I think it represents what the opportunity is that's so unique to the associations world. Unlike every other business or organization out there, associations are trying to push forward an entire vertical. So whatever your industry is, you are the guardians of what is going on for pushing that industry forward into the future. And so I think benchmarking is a great way to accomplish that. And I think it is sorely underutilized in associations. I think associations that are trying to think big and be innovative, what they should be doing is either improving the benchmarking that they're doing or starting it if they're not doing it. But go to your members, find out every little detail about how they are working, you know, what their finances are, what their technology is, what their best practices are, and put that into a database that you then provide access to, either as a member benefit or as a new source of non-dues revenue, or you sell it to third parties who also need that information and are not members. But if you can do that, I'll give you an example. There was one association that they worked with manufacturing, and you know they were realizing that the old model just wasn't working for them, because they were having a hard time getting people to show up for the conference, and you know there were all of these competing things on their members' time, pulling them in different directions. And they set up a benchmarking database just like the one that I described. And they could go back to their members and they could say, how would you like to know where you rank in your state or in the nation? And by being able to provide this information, that was a game changer. And they actually went from going out of business to developing a 7-figure revenue stream. And that was on top of what they were doing before. So they just started to think, okay, what could we do with this niche of manufacturing that only we can do, so that they will only work with me? So that goes back to that Fred Burns quote, but that's what I would throw in, Colleen.
Thank you so much, Thomas. All right, I have more questions, but we are rapidly racing through our time. So I'm going to quickly switch over to an audience submitted question, and then I'll see if I can sneak some more of mine in. Melinda, I'm going to have you start us off with this question. This is a question from Kelsey. Kelsey asked, do you see a trend of associations using multiple different service providers, AMS, LMS, one site for event registrations, one for mobile platform, or do you see more associations looking for single source platforms that offer all services under a single contract?
What we're seeing, and this is just our experience, is lots of multiple services. And I think it's because most organizations have a lot of different needs between governance, membership expectations, and they're just finding that at least the ones we're working with, they're finding the best solutions through integrations and lots of different types of services that they're blending. I'm sure, I don't know, Neeraj, what your other experiences are, but yeah, we've seen people really put together what looks like it suits them best.
Yeah, I think so. One of the things is that you cannot get the entire landscape right through one service. So if we are talking about a learning management system, or if we are talking about event app, so you can have couple of things right done into one. Like for Fontiva, you have got AMS, which has got Fontiva events, which has got Fontiva payments. But most of the times what happens is people are actually using other systems, and it involves an integration cost, right? Or maybe moving from one system to another. So you have to see, it's not necessary that you bring everything under one roof. Sometimes it's easy to just integrate two systems and get the data flowing between two systems. Because people have been using the old system and it's not easy to move them from one system to another. So we generally recommend to do a kind of analysis and see or maybe a cost benefit analysis in seeing which is more beneficial to you, either using different services or maybe putting everything under one roof. Because putting everything under one roof is not feasible, not technically feasible, not functionally feasible. But I would suggest for the associations who are looking for that change, to do a cost benefit analysis for doing this and maybe seek help from others to understand if that is feasible or not.
Can I follow up with that with a quick line? That reminds me of talking to an association exec who talked about the high cost of cheap. That sometimes it sounds really appealing to get everything under one roof because it just sounds like it's going to be financially beneficial, but then it just doesn't end up serving you the way you need to be served. Sometimes it does work, and when it does, that's great. It's very well integrated, but putting a little time and effort into looking at other options and what else serves you, and to not be intimidated by integrations, I think is really important.
I would also like to add to that, APIs are a big deal. And I think a lot of people are not really successfully tapping the potential of an application programming interface to connect a system with another system. And I think if people start to think along those lines, They won't have to necessarily replace a whole system, and they will have the advantages, Kelsey, of a one-stop platform, but the customization available through different components added into that. So either there's an API that already exists that you can use to connect your systems, or if there's not one, it can often be built. And it's a lot less cost to do that than it is to, scrap everything and start over.
Definitely. Thank you so much, Thomas. All right. Unbelievably, we are wrapping up. We are getting to the end of our time, and I want to make sure I hear from each of our panelists at least one final time before we have to wrap up before the end of the hour. So my last question, I'm going to admit, is a little bit of a big and broad one. Thomas, I'll have you start us off with it. What do you see as the future of association technology, and how can our associations on the call today get ahead?
Well, I think the future of technology has to do with the new tools that we have for data management, and those tools can be from the perspective of data visualization or data analysis. So from a data analysis perspective, there are new AI tools that are very effective in sorting through unstructured data and making that much more useful than it's ever been. And then from a data visualization perspective, and what I mean by that is the ability to pull up a dashboard that tells you exactly the information that you need when you need it. In the past, we've had control panels, and before we had control panels, we had Excel spreadsheets, and then we had, the backs of napkins, which I referred to before. But now we're in an era where data can be presented in a very sophisticated way that makes it much more accessible to not just you as a user, but to your board, to your members, to anyone that you need to share it to. And so if you're looking at the evolution in technology from the perspective of data analysis and data visualization, it's going to give you a much better leg up on where the technology is going.
Great. Thank you so much, Thomas. All right, Neeraj, what are your thoughts? What do you see as the future of association technology, and how can we get ahead today?
I think I see technology is going to change with every 3 or 4 years. And what I see as a change within the associations, and that is going to help the associations, is to see a single unified system within the associations where all these landscape features that they have, whether it's learning management system or event app, or the accounting system, or their marketing tool that they use, they are all connected with each other, and the data flowing across these systems, so that you are able to understand your members better, because it's not that your marketing team has contacted someone and again your sales team contacts him, right? So marketing team has to be in sync with the sales team, because it's marketing team's responsibility to nurture your leads, right? Make them available to the sales team, give a background of them to the sales, so that they can actually go to the members with the background information and close those deals. But that can only happen if the information flow is there between the marketing system and the sales system. Similarly with the accounting system, right? If your invoices are not getting generated into the invoicing system from your sales team, right? So you are going to even call your members who have paid their renewal fees. So, and that is very irritating, right? Because customers don't forget bad experiences. They tend to forget good experiences, right? So you will never, bad experiences remain with you for a longer time. So I think to provide good customer servicing to your members, to your customers, you need to have a unified system at the back end. And that is what digital disruption is, digital transformation is. And I see that associations should be digitally transformed in the next couple of years or so.
Wonderful. Thank you. All right. Over to you, Melinda. What do you see as the future and how can we prepare today?
So the future, this is coming from Gartner and Harvard Business Review and the Association for Talent Development. It's change. A lot of change is coming. We're going to see a lot of technology changes. So I think in terms of getting ahead, the best thing you can do is prepare your team with change management capabilities. According to ATD, when you incorporate these capabilities like project management, change management, then you're elevating your whole team to be higher performing and to prepare your team to make them agile. Then in a way, it doesn't matter what new is coming, if it's predictive analytics, if it's blockchain, if it's AI, your team's going to be in a better spot to manage it and allow your association to take that and thrive.
Fantastic. All right. With that, we have reached the end of our panel. I want to give a big thank you to our panelists. I know if we were in an in-person setting, there would be a round of applause. So know that I'm sending that to you emotionally through the screen, even though we're not in person today. I do also want to give a big thank you to our audience, particularly our live audience, as well as those watching the recording. Again, no matter when you're watching, thank you so much for taking time out of your day. Hope you learned something. Hope you can take something with you in the amazing work that you're doing. And I also hope you will join us for future panel sessions. We have a ton of panels scheduled for the winter and spring, including a lot of association-specific panels, including panels on member engagement, onboarding new members, professional development for associations, and more. So hopefully there will be relevant sessions to you and your work, and you will join us. Very quickly, I'm going to suggest that if you do plan to join us for future panels, I highly suggest making a free NX Unite account. My reason for this is that means that when you sign up for future panels, you're going to start earning what's called cause coins. And when you amass enough of those cause coins on the NX Unite site, you'll be eligible to redeem some really fantastic rewards, including some discounts on industry software and some free consultations with some of our friends in the industry. So if you're already taking time out of your day to join us for sessions, I just want you to get that extra benefit of being an NX Unite account member. All right, that is it for me. Again, a huge thank you to our panelists for taking time out of your day. Thank you to our audience, and I hope you all have a nice rest of your day. Bye, everyone.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Thanks very much.